Have you noticed any resistance to your becoming bishop due to the fact that you're a woman?
Yes, in fact, there are people who have expressed their concern for me and their consternation that there's something like a female bishop. There are some people that have difficulty calling me bishop and would rather not.
Welcome to CooLife Podcast, brought to you by therealthingdating.com. www.therealthingdating.com.
Polydor Records for out scouting. This girl grabbed my bangs and ran my head right into the speaker.
Oh,
And everyone cheered like this. Yeah.
When we shot the scene in Good Will Hunting, I didn't know who most of these people were at the time. I mean, they weren't stars. It was Gus Van Sant that directed it. Gus Van Sant was on the floor with Matt Damon's character. I didn't even know who Matt Damon was at that time.
I'm Eva John. I'm a former candidate for local government. I was a children's television entertainer, and I love this world, and I believe we should take care of each other and have a lot of fun along the way. Welcome to CooLife. Here we go.
And welcome to CooLife Podcast. I'm Eva John, and today we are speaking with Bishop Althea Nwaelleh of the Living Church in Nigeria. Althea, welcome.
Thank you.
It's so wonderful to have you here. And I want to say I'm so impressed and so excited to have you here as the Bishop of the Living Church, newly ordained. And can you tell me, as for being a female bishop in your church system, has there been a female bishop in your church system before?
I believe there are some female bishops in Lagos and Abuja, some far-flung places, but in our area, I believe I may be just one of a very small group. I haven't met the others from my area. I won't say that there are no other. I can't really confirm that. As far as I know, I'm the only one.
I know it can be a rare thing in churches around the world. I did look into it, and here and there, it's still, whenever you find a lady who is a bishop, in many areas, it's the first or the second. And it is a big thing. And for women, I have to tell you, I'm very proud to know that a wonderful woman of God has become a bishop. Now, prior to your becoming bishop, this position was held by your husband, Bishop Kevinson Nwaelleh. And what has it been like to take over such a demanding position when you know the previous person is so well known, is so well loved, and that may come with a lot of weight and expectations?
Yes. In fact, I was taken by surprise when the bishops of Nigeria had approached me to become a bishop and to stand in my husband's position. They felt that the work in the ministry needed the leadership, and they felt that I was well versed in ministry structure and in the things of God to take over the position that my husband held for many years.
Well, it's just beautiful to know that you were able to continue in that role.
Thank you.
And can you tell me, what is the name of the governing body for the church system that you're in?
It's the Charismatic Bishops of Nigeria.
Okay.
So it really is an umbrella for Pentecostal evangelical churches in Nigeria.
When you were brought into this role, did you feel you were prepared for your responsibilities and this new role and this new responsibility as a bishop?
I don't think anyone feels fully prepared for, and as I said, I really didn't expect it, but people who I respect and look up to felt that this was something I needed to do, and I considered it. I took it with fear and trembling, put it that way, and it wasn't really something that I had expected in any way. So preparation was very much on short notice because they wanted to move very quickly. So it was very soon after my husband's funeral that the consecration to the position of bishop came to me.
Being taken on the role of bishop and as a woman, have you noticed any resistance to your becoming bishop due to the fact that you're a woman?
Yes, in fact, there are people who have expressed their concern for me and their consternation, put it that way, that there's something like a female bishop. There are some people that have difficulty calling me bishop and would rather not, put it that way. I think that it's over time that it will show whether or not this was the right thing to do. And there are people that no matter what you do, there'll always be somebody that won't like what you do. Even the Lord Jesus said, beware when all men speak well of you. So we keep moving on. I mean, you can't stop just because you have a bit of opposition.
That's true. And I'm really pleased to hear that you are approaching the role with a position of strength and that you are not looking at this in a position of fear, in spite of people not necessarily being ready to accept you as a bishop, as a woman in that role. Right now, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to talk about our sponsors and supporters. We'll be right back with more of our conversation with Bishop Althea Nwaelleh on CooLife Podcast.
Those lonely days of lockdowns and isolation are gone for good. Go to www.therealthingdating.com. That's www.therealthingdating.com. It's time to share. Share your time, share your life, share your love. www.therealthingdating.com. Join for free. Upgrade at any time, starting at just $5.99 a month. www.therealthingdating.com. Because it's time. You're listening to the CooLife Podcast. We'll be back in 3, 2, 1.
And we are back on CooLife Podcast with Bishop Althea Nwaelleh of the Living Church in Nigeria. Althea, now that you are a bishop moving forward with a lot of responsibilities and goals for your church, but can you tell me, prior to becoming a bishop, how long were you continuing to work as an ordained minister?
Yes, I've been in ministry since 1989. I was licensed in Ontario, Canada in 1990. And so from then till now, I've been more on and off in full-time ministry over the course of that time till now.
And so prior to becoming a minister, as a young woman, as a teenager even, could you tell that you were called to work within the church?
I believe that when I made a commitment to serve the Lord Jesus, it was very soon after that I started experiencing kind of what they would call the call of God on my life. And I was very much drawn to ministry and to the things of God. And though I studied in University of Toronto, and then I went on to Syracuse University in the United States. Nevertheless, I still had a draw and a pull to do the work of God. And so my field work, when I fast forward, I went to Nigeria in 1989 and went headlong into ministry and just really threw myself into ministry in a very intense way, and alongside my husband. And my work was quite widely recognized, and put it this way, the impact that I was having was quite highly honored, put it that way. And so that's how it was kind of like an honorary recognition. I had gone through a life crisis, and I had a health issue, and through poisoning, I fought for my life. I nearly died of hepatitis. And when I came back to Canada to recuperate, they really felt that they were seeing the last of me. And so their hearts went out to our home church at the time, the Lighthouse Gospel Center. And so at that time, the minister there really supported my dream of being in full-time ministry, and in assessing my educational background as well as my field work in ministry. That's how they came to see to it that I was ordained.
It's an amazing path, and I'm glad that you came through the other side of something so dire as a poisoning, and that you're here to touch lives for many, many years since.
Yes.
Now, travel has been an important part of your ministry. You have ministered all over the United States. I'm trying to think maybe every state in the United States. You've been all across Canada. I've seen you minister, and I know there is an effect, and I know we can almost call it an Althea effect. Have you noticed, have you sensed when you have been to a church that you have reignited the excitement in the faith in that church?
I have, and I know that people do express their enthusiasm when I share the word and encourage them to serve God and have faith in God. And so I have recognized that I'm impactful, and it's out of my own passion for the Lord that I do what I do. And it's hard to sort of assess yourself, really, but the response is very positive. Thank you.
That's wonderful. I've certainly seen it. I'm glad that it's something that is consistent. Right now, we're going to take another break to talk about our sponsors and supporters. We'll be right back. We're going to continue our conversation with Bishop Althea Nwaelleh on the CooLife podcast.
Those lonely days of lockdowns and isolation are gone for good. Go to www.therealthingdating.com. That's www.therealthingdating.com. It's time to share. Share your time, share your life, share your love. www.therealthingdating.com. Join for free. Upgrade at any time, starting at just $5.99 a month. www.therealthingdating.com. Because it's time. This is CooLife Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to CooLife on your streaming service and on YouTube as Hellenique Today. That's HELENIQUE Today. Because that helps us to bring more cool stuff to your ears. You're listening to the CooLife Podcast. We'll be right back.
And we are back on CooLife podcast. I'm Eva John, continuing our conversation with Bishop Althea Nwaelleh. Bishop, I want to take a look at the fact that I know you are a teacher with a master's in education. You are also a licensed addictions rehabilitation counselor, as well as being a minister. Do you feel that your careers are all connected?
I believe that I see my careers as assignments, and I see them as intersecting. And there are seasons when there's an emphasis, or I feel drawn to do one thing more than another, perhaps. I'm always preaching. I mean, that's a tireless, I could do that always. And then the other things that I do them as, project by project as doors open for me.
Some really beautiful work that's life-changing for the people who encounter you. You've had a highly successful and highly recognized rehabilitation program in Nigeria, which has been awarded and recognized from the government. Now, you never do things small, and I'm glad that you've been able to help people on something so important as addictions. Having been an addictions counselor in Canada and in Nigeria, what differences did you see in being able to do rehabilitation in each country?
In Canada, I would say that people are far more versed in the language around addiction. They're far more aware of the cues and signals of someone that's struggling with addiction, and they're more sensitive, perhaps. Here, it feels like a whole new horizon. It's not that people haven't been working with this, but like at many places in the world, it's kind of reached an epidemic, and people are desperate for answers. And really, people lack information. And so what ends up happening is brutality. And so I find myself in a place of having to do public awareness, working with families, as well as working with people who are struggling with addiction and really don't know how they ended up where they did.
Right.
I find that culturally speaking, people are more tied to family here than in Canada. And it becomes a family issue. And the stigma is woeful. It's quite bad anywhere, but it is actually very devastating to have a family member who's struggling with addiction. They go to great lengths to hide it, so, and do sort of like a lot of work around it and hoping it will go away. So it's tackled differently. And I find that my work with people struggling with addiction has to do with, understanding motives, understanding themselves, and understanding some of the dysfunction in their family that has precipitated the problem with drugs.
And that is a big part of communication, being able to get to the point where they can reach out for help. In North America, the idea of rehabilitation and understanding that addiction is a disease, that's a baseline. I think that happens here in Canada, in the United States, where somehow the word has gotten out. I think it's made it perhaps easier for people to reach out for help. Without that as a baseline, as a part of the communication, part of the language of addiction being a disease, not so much of a stigma of a personal failing. Have you found ways that, I know you mentioned, getting some education to people at large. You find you have created new techniques to bridge that gap of understanding?
I believe that I've depended on the techniques that I learned and studied while I was in Canada. and maybe tweak them a little bit to be more culturally relevant to Nigeria. But I think that it's a global problem, and in some ways it's also a local problem. And so it has to be kind of treated on both levels. In terms of using evidence-based techniques, cognitive behavioral therapy, and those sorts of things, that's standard, and that's part of what I use. But also being a bishop and being somebody that really relies on things spiritual, I find that it is necessary and important to involve a spiritual dimension to the treatment.
I'm glad that you're able to bring so much to what you are doing with your work in treatment and as a minister. I realize that leading up to the time that we lost Bishop Nwaelleh, you did put your rehab services on hold for a time. And do you find that was there any other systems, were there any other programs available to help people in the interim?
There may be, they're few and far between. I think there is now a growing trend of other people involved in addiction therapy and so on. But as far as I'm concerned, this part of my interests or my projects, calling projects and so on, I'm putting it on the shelf for now. I don't know when I'll return to it.
And that's just what I was wondering too, if you do see yourself bringing back your program for rehabilitation and addictions. So as far as the foreseeable future?
Right now, just becoming a bishop is a lot. And just to stand in the role of leading the ministry has taken up time in learning a whole new set of leadership skills that I require. And I owe it to the people that look up to me to be at my best. So I really have my full attention on being a bishop right now. And perhaps in the days to come, I'll be able to venture out in some other areas of interest of mine and where in different ways I can help and minister to people. But for now, I purpose to develop my leadership skills in the position of a bishop.
Well, I'm really excited to hear more about your role and your new responsibilities. For now, this is the end of our episode for part 1 of our conversation with Bishop Althea Nwaelleh. And please keep an eye on the schedule for our upcoming part 2. Althea, I want to thank you so much for your time and for scheduling the in. And until next time, thank you and goodbye from Eva John at
Thank
CooLife
you.
Podcast. Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure.
And that was our show. Thank you for listening to the very end. Please remember to subscribe through your streaming service to get more access to our guest interviews. Also, please subscribe on YouTube to help support our podcast. Until next time, I'm Eva John for CooLife Podcast. Thank you for turning me on.